If you feel like you're tolerating your life, this is the video for you. Hey there, welcome back. This week I want to share kind of a personal story about a transition that I've been going through for the past few months. In March of 2015, I began my life coach certification process. I found the certification group that I wanted to go through, and I started the whole process at the very beginning of 2015, and in March I went to my first intensive weekend. That first weekend we really dug deep into who we are and where we want to go with our life, which is something that really speaks to my soul. But the group that I go through can be a little spiritual and a little woo-woo sometimes, so it was one of those situations where you take what works for you and you leave the rest behind. So I was sitting there listening, kind of in a daze, kind of not in a daze, and something really struck me that I've carried with me since that weekend. I realized that I was living in a constant state of tolerance. Everything was just at this very manageable level all the time, that it wasn't so terrible that it was motivating me to do anything, but it wasn't so awesome that I was totally pleased with where everything in my life was. I was somewhere in this really middle gray area that was just a constant state of toleration. And honestly, I didn't even realize it until that very moment in this intensive weekend. Now, the whole premise of this came up when we were talking about energy levels and kind of getting a little woo-woo, so I wasn't really listening too much, to be perfectly honest. But then I came back to it later and really did some soul searching, and that was when I realized I was living in a constant state of tolerance. For me, tolerance meant that everything was just fine. You know, my job was fine, my business was fine, my relationship was fine. My apartment that I hate, I would just say, oh, it's fine. Like, everything was just fine, but I knew on the inside that it wasn't fine. Because on the inside, I knew that this is not the life that I wanted. This everyday life of going to this 9 to 5, of coming home to this crappy apartment, of living in a city that I'm kind of over, that's not okay with me, but for some reason I was tolerating it and I wasn't really making too many plans to move forward. So for me, this state of toleration looked like me being moody, me being bored, me having low energy, moping around all the time, being a complainer, not being the best employee, not working on my business to the full effect that I could. This state of tolerance was affecting me in more ways than I knew, but because I hadn't even realized what was happening, I didn't realize the big picture. I didn't realize the holistic view until I understood what was really happening on the inside. Now, to be perfectly honest, I cannot remember very much of what happened that weekend, except for this defining moment that I was living in a constant state of toleration. And for me, toleration is unacceptable. That's not who I am, that's not who I want to be, and that's not the life that I want to be living. So after that weekend, I did a lot of soul searching, and I realized that I had to make some big, drastic moves. After that weekend is when I decided to set a date to move to Asia. After that weekend is when I really set some boundaries in a couple of relationships that weren't really serving me. After that weekend, I really began focusing on my business in more ways than one. So it wasn't until I realized that I was living in this constant state of toleration that I could actually make positive change in my life. So my challenge for you is to think about what type of state you're living in. Are you living in toleration? Are you constantly complaining about your situation? Are you absolutely excited about where your life is? I'm not really sure where you stand, only you know that, but I really encourage you to do a lot of soul searching and really think about where you are, the constant state that you're living in, and think about where you want to go in the future. In the comments below, I want you to just leave a little story. Tell me about the state that you're living in right now. Are you happy with this state? Do you want to make changes? Are you still trying to figure things out? Are you still moving things around in your mind? Let me know where your head's at. Go ahead and show me in the comments what you're thinking and what you're planning on next. Also, don't forget to click the button below where you can sign up for my email list, and I'll send you this awesome bonus of how to have 20 more ways to have adventure in your life. And I promise you, if you just read this book, You won't be tolerating any more. See you next week.